You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 26. Say what? Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today for the 26th episode of the Chopped Podcast. This is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week I'm sharing thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and a little bit about what doesn't. Today's guest is Amanda Rettke of the site I Am Baker. Amanda and I are talking about the creative process for food bloggers. But first, I want to tell you a little story. My daughter Addie and I were riding bikes the other day, and she was lamenting about how hard it was. And I should explain that we live in a hilly neighborhood. So I kind of agree with her. It is hard work. I think it's kind of funny because it reminds me of, when you watch a jogger jogging down the street and you think, wow, that's hard work. That just looks hard. But then when you see somebody riding their bike, you kind of think, oh, that looks like fun. That looks kind of easy. But then when you get out there, you realize, oh, wow, that's really kind of hard. Like I'm breathing heavy when I'm riding the bike, and at least until you get used to it. But that's how the creative process is. From the outside looking in, it looks really easy. Oh, that's going to be fun. I get to figure out what I'm going to be posting about. And then you get into it and it's complicated and it's hard. Like, are you going to publish on a schedule? Or are you going to, plan things out? There's a lot of decisions that have to be made that makes things kind of complicated. And, Amanda and I talk about that. For example, she talks about how when she had things too planned out, she started to feel a little regimented and it kind of stifled some of her creativity, and she felt like she could see it in her writing. And I think that's a good example of how some people really flourish when they have a very strict, tight publishing schedule. And other people will do better when they have a little bit more creativity in their publishing schedule. And I think that's all part of the creative process. And it's really important for you to figure out what works best for you, what resonates well with you. And so I think this is a great discussion that Amanda and I are having, and I hope that it leads to you thinking through your process and kind of figuring things out. So if you've ever felt guilty that you're not doing things the right way because you hear someone else talking about their publishing schedule that goes 6 months down the road and you're still working on what you're going to publish tomorrow, Amanda has a great message for you. There's no one right way to go about this. Guess what's coming up around the corner? That's right, Chopped Conference. If you haven't got your ticket, you need to get right on that. In fact, Amanda is one of our speakers, and I think you're going to agree it's worth going just to hear her speak. And there are other great speakers too. And more than that, we've got an awesome community of inspired bloggers just like you. So buy your ticket today for Chopped Conference on October 15th through the 16th. You can learn more about it by heading to choppedcon.com today. So let's go straight to that interview with Amanda. Today's intro shout out is to Julie of Julie Eats Treats. Julie said she was listening to the Chopped Podcast while taking her noon hour walk. Julie, you go, girl. I love it. So what are you doing while listening to the Chopped Podcast? Send me a shout out on Twitter or Instagram using #ChoppedCon, and maybe I'll feature you and your site in an upcoming episode. But for today, in honor of Julie, everybody lace up your walking shoes, put on some sunscreen, get out those headphones, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to have Amanda Rettke of I Am Baker on the show today. Amanda, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today about your blog and your creative process and everything. I'm so excited. But let's take a step back first. And can you describe for everybody why you started your blog?
Yes. I started a blog about 10 years ago, and it was called I Am Mommy. And I did that because I had a difficult first pregnancy. I have 5 kids. And I had difficult first pregnancy, and so I was at home. And I didn't know what to do at home. I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the house, really. And so I kind of found a computer and went online. And at the time, there weren't really blogs. There weren't really the structure that we have now today. But I started this very old, this is going to age me so much, America Online Journal about, my pregnancy and childhood and all the things I was dealing with as a new mommy. And that kind of moved into me baking a little bit more because I kept having babies and I kept having events that we were going to. And so I would bake cakes and cookies and things like that. And so I was like, I don't want to bore everyone with my baking stuff. So I'm just going to put this on the side and call it I Am Baker. Well, it turns out no one cared about I Am Mommy in the first place, so it was okay that I separated things up a little bit. And now I Am Baker is essentially my main blog, and I still have I Am Mommy because that's where my heart is, but that is more for soul writing. That's not for the business side of it.
I get it. So the I Am Baker really turned into, your business really, right? The main focus.
Definitely.
But I Am Mommy is still there for your creative outlet.
Yes. Because first and foremost, I consider myself a child of God first, and then it's wife and mommy, and then business comes in. But so I always like to have the outlet there available to me. That's one of my big pieces of advice to people when they're starting a blog or not really knowing how to define their blog is don't box yourself in, because while it's great to have a niche and to have yourself defined, we as humans are so much more than just one category. And so I love having that I Am Mommy there as something that I can fall back on and just talk about kids or talk about parenting, talk about being a wife, if I don't feel like baking something that day.
I think that's such great advice too, because I personally feel that, boxed in feeling at times, especially, even beyond just the concept of like what my focus of my blog is, but also about, because I've been doing this for a while and it's easy to start to feel fenced into this, I don't know, maybe it's a style I've developed or an approach I have to how I'm sharing my recipes. And the next thing you know, it's like it becomes a pattern.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So I like the idea of, the example I can give is I think I have tended to more recently not to share as much about myself. And I do think you're better off if you're sharing, more like, maybe your I Am Mommy is an opportunity for you to talk about parenting and things that are working and just to, be vulnerable and be yourself. And that's important, I think.
Yes, totally. And that's a great situation for you to look to who influences you. So someone that I look to figure out what I like best in sharing style is, the Pioneer Woman. Mm-hmm. So everyone knows a Pioneer Woman, but she shares all the time. And she on every level, on every category. But if you look at what she's sharing, it's not too in-depth. We're not getting politics, religion, none of the big categories, but it's a constant flow of sharing on her end, which creates a relationship. So I feel like I know her, even though I don't really know her.
Yeah.
That is something that I enjoy creating online. I like being able to share, non-specific things. I like being able to share generalities with readers whenever the mood strikes. But it doesn't have to be, this is the president I'm voting for, and guess what? Now we're going to be divisive. It doesn't have to go there necessarily.
I think that's a really good point too. I appreciate that as well. I in fact, I've even thought that when I've been on the Pioneer Woman site that, she shares a lot, but she doesn't really get into anything like that. And I like that.
Yes, I do.
Honestly,
too.
I think sometimes our whole world has become too political. And I would just really like a break from all of that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would like, especially when we're as bloggers, we have to be on social media so much.
Yeah.
It's nice to have kind of a safe place to go to where you're not judged or you don't have to be divisive, and you can just have some joy in your online time.
I love it. Joy in your online time. That's a great quote right there. So you're going to be speaking at the 2015 Chopped Conference. I'm so excited to have you.
Yes. Hey, I'm so excited to come.
Yay. So I'm just really looking forward to, people are going to come and they're going to hear you talk, and it's going to be a great time. So everybody, you got to come just to hear Amanda speak alone.
I don't know. I heard Matt is going to be there, and that's kind of why I'm going. I'm a fangirl. So
yes. Matt Armendaris is going to be there too. Yeah. So, I can't get over the really developing a great lineup of high quality speakers. I'm so excited.
Yes, it will be fun.
More than anything, I think it's an opportunity to help people, who are inspired to be food bloggers as well, just to learn what they can. I think sometimes I find in food blogging, there's a lot of information that's out there, but at the same time, it's not like you can go get a degree in becoming a food blogger. So I feel like the more you can learn from other people, the better you can get at your craft.
That's very true. And another something to support that line of thinking is that, most of us are adults. Most of us are past the age of 18. We're very visual learners and auditory learners, not necessarily reading. And so when we can have someone stand up in front of us and show us what they do and tell us what they do and what is successful for them, it really makes it easier for us to absorb the information and really apply it to our lives.
That is so true. I've actually always called myself a kinesthetic learner too. Like,
yes,
I can read something until I'm like, my brain has gone dead. I just can't do it until I've actually got my hands on it and tried it. And I think that's something about it at a conference, because I'll have my computer in front of me and maybe you're talking about this or that. And I'm actually typing it or I'm writing it down. And for some reason, that movement of my hand, I have hand to brain syndrome.
Most bloggers do, I think.
I think you're right. Maybe it's an adult thing. Like as your kids, we learn one way, but maybe as we grow older, we learn differently. I don't know, but
yeah,
that's a good thing about going to a conference. But
yeah,
let's get back to I Am Baker. I want to ask you, so before you started I Am Baker, have you been into cooking for a long time?
No, I actually can't cook at all. I'm a terrible cook. My husband is an excellent cook. And my baking as well is, I kind of tell the story of when I started I Am Baker. It was really pompous of me because I was not a baker. Like, I have no formal training. I don't really know what I'm doing. I kind of wing it on my recipes, which if you talk to anyone who is formally trained, baking is a science and you have to be exact, and that's not how I do things. So I should have maybe thought my name through a little bit more, but I do like decorating and sharing ways of being creative when you're baking in the kitchen. And so I think that's kind of where I may have a loyal following or friends online, is that I share things in a way that's maybe not the norm. And since I don't have that formal training with I Am Baker, then I tend to use the tools of the trade in a unique way that they have not been taught how to formally use. And so it just kind of opens itself up to a new level of creativity.
Well, and don't you think it also reaches your audience that says, they're not formally trained either. And when you can do these fabulous cakes, then they think, oh, I can do this too then.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think because most of us that are at home in the kitchen baking are not formally trained. We're moms and we're there for a necessity, not necessarily because we want to just be in the kitchen and be creative all day long. And so, yes, it's really fun to be able to share easy ways that people can wow and impress others with their talents. And that's something I talk about actually quite extensively in my book, Surprise Inside Cakes. The reason that book kind of came about is because the first time I made a surprise inside cake and people cut into it, the looks on their faces and the reaction was totally addictive. I just could not get out of my head how people were blown away and they were just filled with joy. And when you can do something that causes people to have so much happiness and joy, it's totally something you want to recreate again and again. And I love being able to share that with people so that they can recreate that experience in their lives.
Because, honestly, isn't that what we're all looking for when we take something to a dinner or, somewhere where everybody's bringing something and you want that look of, wow, when people cut into your cake or whatever.
Yes, totally. We all have that inner craving, to be recognized and for people to understand that we have a talent or appreciate the effort that we put into something. So I love that there's certain things on the site that allows people to have those moments.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have seen Amanda's Surprise Inside Cakes, but they are just a thing to behold. You've got it. I'll leave a link in the show notes so people can check out your book. It is so incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They look like a ton of work, but I imagine that you break it down into a process that's pretty easy.
Well, yeah.
That's your goal, right?
We try. Some of them can definitely be a lot of work. But yeah, some of them can be super easy and fun to do. And so it can be a process for the whole family, actually.
So has that been one of your favorite parts about food blogging, is to share these recipes in a way that you know that your audience gets to have that fulfillment of joy in baking as well?
Yes, definitely. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle." And I just truly believe that our joy, our innate joy, aside from faith and the other sources that we may get it, comes from what we put out into the world and how people are able to utilize that. Is it a catalyst? So I love thinking that something I may have done at some point is bringing joy into the world on a level that it wasn't there before. And so I feel humbled by the whole experience and motivated to do more, to be a bigger part of people's lives if they let me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And how about, is there anything about food blogging that you don't like so much?
Yes. There it is. I am, as you may have gathered, a little bit on the creative side. And so I tend to not have the brain capability of like the technical side of blogging. And one thing I have learned through the 10 years is, social media and the technical side of that, but I don't enjoy it very much. I don't like SEO and writing the blog posts and doing all of the back end stuff that tends to wear down on my energy levels. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to outsource that, but then again, being creative, that's difficult in itself too. So it's just kind of one of the things, no job can be 100% perfect.
That's right. There's always, I always tell my daughter, even if you decided to become a brain surgeon, that might be like the thing that you wanted to do, it's going to have parts about it that you don't like.
Definitely. And that's something to keep in mind for blogging. Really know your passion, what you are passionate about going into it, so you can have some focus on that. And so when the days get long and the hard stuff comes along, you can kind of fall back on, the joy and passion that brought you there initially.
Yeah. So let's talk about I Am Baker for a second, because do you do recipes besides, most of your recipes are baking?
Yes, I do a ton. I Am Baker, that basically is focused on desserts, totally desserts, and I do a ton of cakes, but I love the brownies and the cookies and things like that. On I Am Mommy is where I have some savory things, and that is, we can't eat desserts for every single meal of the day, right. As much as I'd like to convince people that they could. And so it's good to have a little mix in there where I can share, the chicken dinners that we eat. And that also helps with, because I'm a big believer in supporting community, that also helps with when I want to share work from others. If, someone's put out a book that is a savory book and I still want to help promote their content, I have a place where I can specifically help promote them. So it's, it's a good idea to not box yourself in.
Yeah, it's nice to have that opportunity. And you've got a distinction between the two. Each one has its own mission.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So did you feel like, I'm just curious about your blogging experience in general. You're a full-time food blogger, right?
Correct.
And did that feel like an overnight success kind of thing, or was it, a process that took time?
Well, it's kind of yes to both. So I'd had my blog for a few years before I started the I Am Baker, and so there was this is so humbling. I remember telling my mom one day, my blog got 2,000 hits this month, and I'm kind of a big deal. And like your mom, you can only ever say these things to your mom.
Yeah.
And my mom I think she actually rolled her eyes at me, which was so appropriate. But yes, so I did not have success with my blog before I Am Baker. And then once I started I Am Baker, that really did kind of take off in a much quicker way than I had experienced prior. So while I had been in the industry for a number of years prior to that, I did have somewhat of a faster success with the I Am Baker.
Oh, that's kind of nice. You got a little bit of both that way.
Right.
That's really great. So one of the main reasons I asked you to come on the show today is because I wanted to talk with you about your creative process. And we're also going to hope to throw in a little bit about social media strategies as well. But let's start with your creative process. Can you share a little bit about how that works for you?
Sure. So I feel like inspiration is 50% of what I do, where I get the inspiration and how we materialize that. I think that looking to the world in general is a great place to start. And I know people want to be like, what exactly are you looking at? Is it a specific term in Google that I can put in? And no, it is not. I think for me, it is magazine covers. It's outfits that my kids are wearing, because I don't know, baby clothes. Could there be anything cuter? I'm constantly inspired by baby clothes. It is other people around me. It's truly everything. And so I think when people are maybe introduced to the concept of being inspired by the world around them and then leaving that thought in their head. So the next time they go out in their car and they're sitting at a stoplight and there's a cute bumper sticker on the car in front of them, allowing that to be part of your inspiration and thinking, I love the colors in that. I bet you I can make a fun cake. Or I love the font on that. I bet you I could pull together a post on my favorite fonts. And then you make a great pinnable image. Yeah. And that right there could be a really well-performing blog post for you. And then it's a great option to write that stuff down. Or if you have your phone nearby, quick drop that idea into your notes in your phone, or if you have an app that you can use that for, and don't lose it forever. I don't know if anyone out there is like me, but I think so many things all throughout the day and don't write them down. And I think, I'll remember that. That's the best idea I've ever had. I'll totally remember that. And then it's gone forever.
It's depressing.
It is. It is. And it's, I can't even remember my kids' names. I don't know why I think I can remember anything. But write it down. If you have some type of device that can record your voice on your phone, some type of app that can do that, speak these things to yourself. Even saying it out loud can help if you don't have anything that you can access if you're in the car or something. But just saying things out loud and then reinforcing it in your mind so that you can apply it later when you're sitting at home and want something to call on for your inspiration. So let's see, as far as the creative process, so I typically will have ideas, and I'm one of those people that I have more ideas than time to execute them.
Yeah.
So I have ideas written down in a number of places, notebooks, phone, things like that. And then when I have the time, I'll try and organize them in what can I do now, what's going to take the most time to execute, things like that. And then I'll actually sit down and do them. So I have the luxury with my blog that I can make a cake, decorate it once, and then blog about it. A lot of recipe or food bloggers, they have an idea and they need to test it a number of times before it goes to the blog. So these are things to consider when you're having these ideas. What's a way that I can share this awesome thing that I just thought of that maybe doesn't have as much time in it? And, for like DIY creative people as well, that if that's another niche that they're falling into, that's another way that you can, maybe sit down and organize your ideas in a way like what's the most expensive, what's the most time consuming. Mm-hmm. Start with the easiest and let's get some things executed and then move on. Did I answer that question at all?
Yes, that's really good. So
I feel like I was rabbit trailing all over the place.
No, you're doing great. And I love how, you take it from this very, this idea bumps into your head and now it's down to how do I decide how, it's like creating criteria to help you decide which of these ideas are the ones I'm going to follow.
Right, exactly.
And I guess you could also look at your blog in general too and say like, well, what have I done a lot of lately? So I had 3 pie recipes already and I need to try something different,
Yes.
just to mix things up a little bit.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Naomi from Baker's Royale.
Yes.
She has a beautiful, beautiful blog, but she told me many years ago, she finds something that works on her site and she runs with it. So if she does a sandwich cookie, so it's 2 cookies with like frosting in the middle, and that does well on her site, she will then go and do 10, 12 different sandwich cookie recipes. Great. And then have them all available. And, that's not something that I get really burnt out by ideas really fast.
Yes.
But obviously not everyone is like me. That is a really great option for someone who, wants to push an idea to its limits.
Right.
And for blogging, we always want content. We always want adding new content. That's a really great way to have the content and to not be stretching yourself, for inspiration wise. If you have a
That's not a bad idea too, just because how many people, there's a lot of return visitors, and of course we want that, but there's also a lot of people who just come to your site one time, and so if you repeated 5 different sandwich cookie recipes over the course of a couple of months, that's not such a bad idea.
Right. That's true. We do have a lot, with the invention of Pinterest and all that, we do have one-time customers, and so, having a slight variation on an existing recipe is a great way to keep content on your site and still be, support. It's a great way to support yourself within your blog.
Right. And then you're kind of guaranteed down the road, you could always go back and do a roundup on that because you know that like, for example, if you only have one sandwich cookie recipe on your site, then you can't really do a roundup of that. But if you had 10, you could at some point.
That's a great point. Yeah. And that in itself is another blog post for you, just doing a roundup of content. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. And so have you ever gone through a period where you've had a dry spell of ideas?
Well, no. No, I haven't. But, that is also in part because I have the different facets of where I can express myself creatively. It's not just within baking and food. But no, I tend to have more ideas than I have time to execute.
I'm in the same boat as you. I feel like I'm full of ideas and I'm only doing a few blog posts a week. So it's like, where can you can't fit all these in,
No. Yeah. There's only so much time in the day.
But I like what your idea, if somebody is going through a drought, it seems to me like some ideas I heard you say would just be to look at the things that around you that you happen to like and how could that turn into a recipe for you or a blog post in general. It doesn't even have to be a recipe. Right.
And another great place to find inspiration is yourself. Go back to your blog, something that you did a year ago. Maybe you, at the time when you were doing the recipe, you're like, oh, this would have been awesome with soy sauce. Do it. Do it now. Updating your own recipe, not only are you creating new content for your site, but you're giving yourself a little link juice, getting in there and linking back to yourself. Like you mentioned so awesomely, you could do a roundup eventually if you have multiple posts within that theme. So I would, you don't always have to look externally to support yourself and to be inspired.
Yes. And another thing, you and I were talking about this before we got on the show, is sometimes if you're going through a drought, you might want to take a few days off.
Oh, my word. You preach, girl. Preach it. Yes, exactly. Something that's really hard for bloggers is to disconnect because social media is 24/7. Yes. So you can't necessarily disconnect mentally, but you should. Yeah. You should. One way to do that is to maybe try and get together with other bloggers because sometimes it's fun to discuss things that you don't necessarily have to act on. Let's talk about SEO and what a pain that is, or let's talk about what SEO and how awesome that is for your blog. But let's not worry about it. Let's just talk it through and maybe have a conversation. Of course, as you had mentioned, another great way to do that is completely to disconnect.
Yes.
Go and do your family reunion where you can just be surrounded by people who have no clue what your blog is, what you do, and that's okay.
Right.
Just have fun.
Yes. And they don't even care about any of that stuff. They want to talk about, I don't know, the Royals or whatever.
I did an interview, a television interview 5 years ago for my I Am Mommy blog. And she asked, she's like, well, how do you have an interesting blog? And so my response, it was actually kind of controversial. People got very upset with me, but I said the best way to have an interesting blog is to have an interesting life.
That's controversial?
Well, people were offended, like, oh, so if my blog's not interesting, that means my life's not interesting. Or something. They kind of read into it in a way, but I feel like that we're the best at what we do when we're living life to the fullest. When we're finding the joy in things and then sharing that with people who want to hear our perspective. And so if you are ever feeling a little down or need inspiration, I love your idea of disconnecting and, taking a step back and just living life in a way that has nothing to do with your job, but has everything to do with your joy.
I love that. I love that. Because one of the things I'm thinking too is like, as if you're becoming a food blogger because you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to have your own business, like a lot of times that's fed from the fact that you don't necessarily like the job that you're at, and then think about the things that you don't like about that current job and make sure you don't repeat that in your entrepreneurial work.
Yes, that is so wise.
Yeah, because
Definitely.
if you worked too much or if you're, not enjoying your life or not enjoying the things that you're doing, you have to find a place of joy, I think. And you also need to have a life that is part of that.
Absolutely. I love that.
Hey, we're talking about good stuff here,
I
Amanda.
know, I love it.
So I was going to ask you too, like, do you use any kind of an editorial planner or calendar? Are you planning your posts out? Or are you kind of just feeling like what's working for you this week and that's what you're going to blog about?
Yes, I do not use any sort of planner whatsoever. And at some point I hated that about myself. And I see that other successful bloggers are scheduling posts, 12 to 15 posts out, and they have 2 months of content. And I'm so jealous, and that must free up so much time, and they must be happier than me. And I just had to stop. That is just not how my brain works.
Right.
It's not, the very idea of working to have 12 posts in queue for me is so stressful and such an overwhelming idea that it is completely ineffective. Excuse me. And it does the exact opposite of what it does successfully for others. I think of an idea for a post and I execute it typically that day or the next day, or I write it down and get to it when I can. But it's fly by the seat of your pants always for me. And the more I'm talking about this and having a little less shame about it, I'm finding that other bloggers also do this.
Yes.
Where they, feel a creative burst of inspiration and they kind of want to just go with that instead of making it into a very set and determined schedule. And I think that that's something that people can embrace too, in addition to scheduling things out, is just having a little bit of freedom with your time and your inspiration, your creativity.
I see. So maybe you could even have a little bit of both, where July is ice cream month, and so you're going to have ice cream, but you let yourself have some flexibility about how you do that.
Yes, and I think most of us have work in addition to our blogs. For instance, working with a brand, where a brand is like, "Oh, we're going to want that ice cream post in July," and so you have to know that. I mean, there's certain things that we have to be scheduled about. And so it's good to focus on, the things that we have to get scheduled, and then having a little bit of freedom outside of that.
I like that. I talked with Catherine Taylor back in episode 6, and that's what she said she does as well, that she didn't find it comfortable to have an editorial planner. And, I've been working so hard to do that, and I think I might be coming to the same conclusion as you. But at the same time, I think what's really important for everybody to take into consideration here and to listen to here is that you need to find the process that works for you.
Yes, totally.
Having everything planned out works for you, then you should go for that. But if you need a little bit more flexibility in your creative process, that's important to listen to as well.
Yes. And there were times when I was forcing myself to have the schedule, and I look back on those posts and it's like reading a big recipe site. It's like, This was yummy. Here's the recipe. For me,
yes.
That people don't care, but I can look at that and I can say, this was not my best work.
Yes.
And so it's good to know what your strengths are. We're all different.
Yes, and that's good. That's really, that's actually part of, I think, becoming more authentic in the work that you do, is knowing yourself and what works best for you.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So do you use any kind of calendar at all then? Like even if you're going at it, as the moment strikes you, I would imagine you still have it on a calendar or not?
No. I don't. I don't even know how to use my calendar on my phone. My husband is the opposite of me, and like he has his time scheduled down to the minute, and that's, how he functions best.
Right.
Whereas I'm like, how do I even get to days? Like I'm stuck in months or something.
Right.
I don't even know how to use it. For some things, I had a handwritten notebook, and that's typically what I use. And once I write things down, I'll have the date typically in my mind. So I know I have a sponsored post that I have to get done by July 17th. And I'll maybe go and try and find that in a notebook somewhere, but it's not.
Yes.
There's no reminders. There's nothing. And that's not efficient, and I don't recommend that anybody does that. Don't be like me on that one.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. You be organized.
Publish on certain days of the week?
I don't anymore. I don't understand the mentality behind that, because for me, my traffic comes from my newsletter, which goes out at a specific time. So it'll pull content from before and post at 8 a.m. the next day, or my Facebook, or how I'm sharing on social media. So it really doesn't matter what time I publish a post in my mind, because it's going to be shared with the people who get the email subscription at a specific time, no matter what. And it's going to be shared on Facebook whenever, or social media whenever I choose to put it out there. So I guess I'm not one of those people that's a firm believer that you must publish at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. That hasn't been an effective strategy for me as of yet. So.
Oh, I'm just so glad to hear you say that, because I have talked to other bloggers who do that. And like you say, you start to think, oh, they must be better at this than I am, because,
Yeah.
I don't know that, Monday morning at 8 a.m. is the best time to publish a post, or, I should know my traffic better, or I should do this better, or I should do that better. And it's like,
well, and some people just get into a habit.
Right.
And it's not even that it's the most effective time or strategy for them, but it's what has worked for them. I know those bloggers too that have, significant traffic, and they always post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. A new recipe, and that's kind of what their readers like, and that works for them.
Yes.
But that's organic. That's a specific way of traffic coming to their site, so they understand that this is a majority of their traffic this specific way. Whereas I'm through the email and I'm through social media, and so I can address mine a little bit different.
Yes. I like that. Okay, very good. Again, it just comes down to, finding out what works best for you.
Right.
So, you mentioned about sharing on social media. Do you have that set up so that it goes automatically?
Nope, I don't. With the exception of when I share to Instagram, it automatically shares to Twitter. Because as far as Twitter is concerned, I'm terrible at it. And so if I didn't have that automatic share, I probably wouldn't even be on Twitter, other than to talk about the Real Housewives when that's on. But anyway, no, so I'm basically sharing organically on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. I am definitely on the sharing sites, on like Tailwind, Viral Tag, and things like that. And I've done that at points. But for me, I am that, quote unquote creative type. And so getting in and sharing things organically is best for me.
Okay, good. So when you publish a post, then the next morning or whatever, you get in there and you start sharing these kind of manually to these Facebook and Pinterest and all those.
Exactly.
And, I think the advantage of that is I think you have a tendency to, you can get a better reaction from your readers because they know that it's a personal message from you versus some kind of canned thing that's going across all your social media sites.
Sure. And, I do sincerely appreciate when people do have that type of thing scheduled out. That opens up so much time. But it's good to not have the exact same message scheduled out on every single form of social media. Don't put the exact same phrase and link on Facebook, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on Twitter, because then you're really defeating the purpose of those various forms of social media. They all really function in different ways. And so as bloggers, we need to kind of acknowledge that and maybe even adding originality into our scheduling if we can.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite social media platform right now?
I really enjoy Instagram.
Yes.
That is one of the areas where, I'm a very conservative Christian girl, and, we're just kind of podunks out in the middle of a little country in a very small town. But on Instagram, you probably wouldn't know that because I tend to have a sarcastic side to my personality. And I started sharing that on my images, and people started really responding to it. And so it really opened up a whole way for me to express myself in this funny and self-deprecating and sarcastic way. Yeah. And it's worked pretty well.
And how do you be sarcastic on a post on Instagram? Just from the caption that goes below the photo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So my Instagram is all business in the sense that my images are 98% from my blog.
Okay.
I'm not one of those people that cares if you took the picture with your camera or if you took the picture with your phone.
Yeah.
I don't think that means anything. I think the important thing is you know very strongly what your account, what your brand is.
Yeah.
If it's your personal account, then take 5,000 pictures at Disney. If it's your brand account, if it's the account that you want brands to look at and recognize you for, then that needs to be specific. So I want brands to look at that and say, this person has influence in cake, in baking. And so that is what my brand reflects. So every picture I have on there is related to my brand of I Am Baker, but my captions or, where I'm adding the description of it, that can be pretty much anything that I'm thinking about. It doesn't always say, this is a white cake recipe on my blog. It can be like, my child pooped in the potty today and then stepped in it. So, it's like
yes.
random,
yes.
and it's very, very organic and very self-deprecating. And so I think people enjoy laughing at me online, and I don't mind it one bit.
Oh, that's great. And I'm just curious, when you were writing those captions, do they just come up for you immediately, or do you have to spend a little time thinking about them?
Well, typically it's something that I've seen or something that I've done. So I love Pinterest. I know some people don't like this, but I kind of like the Pinterest picked for you options now that are coming up, because I tend to pin funny quotes or things that make me laugh hysterically online. And so now they're populating like crazy into my feed. And so I will sometimes just share those funny memes that you see on Pinterest. And, I try to always give credit where credit is due. I think that's one of the most important things we can do as bloggers is credit. So I'll just say seen on Pinterest or seen on Facebook.
Good.
Because a lot of those funny quotes have no author, something like that. But then the other half of the time, I'm just, sharing things that my kids have done or, funny situations that I've been in or thoughts that I've had.
Do you ever share quotes on Pinterest then? I mean, I'm sorry, on Instagram?
Yeah, I don't have the actual quote itself written in as the picture. The picture is always something from my blog.
Oh, I see. So that's the caption underneath the photo could be some really cool quote. I love it when I see that. I think it's really nice.
Yeah, and I think that's just what's worked for me. But I follow accounts where I love when people share quotes and other ways of sharing. So I think it can work for anyone, whatever you choose to do.
Yeah, exactly. So when you mentioned that you use Tailwind and Viral Tag for your Pinterest sharing, you also then do your own organic sharing on Pinterest as well?
Yes. So I have accounts with those, and they're just sitting empty right now. I don't have anything going out right now.
Okay.
Sometimes just because I'm just lazy to get in there and do it. And I haven't seen my Pinterest traffic, specifically for me, my Pinterest traffic is pretty consistent. It just grows a certain amount every month, and nothing I really do lessens that or increases that. And so when I signed up for Tailwind, I was full in it, and there was every 10 minutes I had a pin going out and all this stuff, and I didn't see a whole lot of difference in what was happening with the traffic I was getting in and my growth within it. And so if I'm not seeing a whole lot of engagement or return on investment for my time, then I tend to just revert back to what has worked in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I find when I've scheduled out quite a bit on a tool like Tailwind or whatever you use to schedule out, I end up kind of losing touch with what's going on. I mean, I feel like I'm out of touch at least a little bit with what's happening today.
That's a good point. Yeah, when you're not actually in there and seeing the content that is being created in there, that can make a difference.
Yeah,
in what you want to share and what you're sharing and how you're having the experience. So yeah,
and so also you're right. If you're trying to create shareable content, getting out there and seeing what's really being shared can help you go, okay, really close up images are good on a Pinterest, or not to say that you want to cater your content to that, but at the same time, if there's an image you can add to your site that kind of meets the trends that are going on right now, it's something to consider.
Totally. And that also speaks to I am a huge fan of analytics on Facebook, on Instagram, on Pinterest. I really want people to get into their accounts and look at what is working for them, because we are all so different.
Yeah.
And when you look at your best friend who's got a million followers and what's working for her, it's not going to be the same for you. And so I love every now and then just getting into Pinterest and seeing what my most popular pins are. And I can guarantee you I'll be wrong on what I think will be doing well and what's actually doing well.
What I find so intriguing about Pinterest is it seems like the things that do really well are not always these gorgeous photos. It's like, sometimes it looks like something that's maybe a snapshot or, those are the things that do really well sometimes.
Yes, I have a picture of a slice of white cake, and that's all right. But then someone and this has happened to other people I know, someone zoomed in 100%, and so it's just this it's awful picture, and that's been pinned 500,000 times. It's like, what? How is this popular on any level? But it's things like that we should pay attention to.
Yes. Sometimes they like really tight end shots. And I think I imagine that's because when people are looking at it on their phones, it's much easier to see what it is.
Yes. And that's a great point that you bring up. 70% of interaction on social media is mobile. And that is going up all the time. 80% of people on Facebook, I think it was 80%, I could be off on that, are only mobile. They're not ever touching a desktop for how they're accessing information. And so it's very important for us as bloggers, as content creators, to get on our sites and on our social media through our mobile. So pick up your phone and look at how everything looks on your phone or on your iPad, because it's going to be a big difference from your desktop. And this is a different experience for people when they're only using the mobile.
I think the same is true for your site as well. Get on your site on your mobile, if you've got an iPad or your phone, and see what it looks like, see how easy it is to navigate.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. I love all this stuff. So what's your number one tip for helping another food blogger who may be trying to grow their audience?
Well, speaking from experience, what has been my biggest bursts of growth has been other bloggers. So on Instagram specifically, I was at 20,000 followers. And then someone who I just adore dearly, she shared my page. It's Passion for Baking, is at Passion for Baking. She shared my page with her readers. She has over 1 million. And I went up 5,000 overnight.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, that growth like that is hard to originate organically.
Yes.
We can't just share across our social media and see bursts like that. And not only did that increase my following, but it gave me a renewed sense of inspiration to go out there and pursue that form of social media. I think being in Facebook sharing groups, and this is specific for Facebook sharing groups with other influential bloggers, as in bloggers who have engagement on their page or a significant reach on their page, is huge. There has been times just this year even where my traffic just dipped so low. I'm not sure why or what caused it, but if I had not been in those groups and had this consistent source of camaraderie and sharing, I don't know if I would have continued on with pursuing the traffic and the money through traffic, because I couldn't support myself. I couldn't do it by myself. And so as far as the biggest supporter in your growth and finding, the quick boosts in growth, for me, it's all about community. It's all about each other and supporting each other. So if you can share someone's page, even if they're only getting 2 new fans out of it, that's big.
Yes,
that's a big
great
deal. And we should really be encouraging that and supporting that and being grateful when people do that.
It's so cool because when you first said community, I was thinking about community with our audience. And then when I realized you were talking about community with other bloggers, it just really made, for me, social media feel so much better, because you're right. It doesn't have to be about just trying to get our content out in front of our readers. It is an opportunity to engage with other people in our own community.
Definitely.
I love it.
And we all have different communities of audiences.
Oh, right.
And so, to be able to share that with each other, that is such a unique gift within our careers. We have access. So bloggers are influencers on such a huge level. Yeah. And I think sometimes they forget that. They feel like, oh, I only got 100,000 hits this month on my blog. That is a number that brands are salivating over. We have this this power that we often share with others. We do have a really strong community that is significant and that people want access to. And when we can promote each other and share communities with each other, you're not taking anything away from me if you're a dessert blogger and you are sharing the same content that I'm sharing. We can work together and be bigger. And that kind of goes into a whole other thing that I'm really passionate about, and that's competition. I don't believe in competition in our industry. Right. I don't think any of us have competition. I think we have allies, and I think we have friends, and I think if we would, instead of looking at someone who's in the same niche as you as competition, but instead of looking at them as support, that you do nothing but grow. That never hurts you to support others, even if they are doing the exact same thing as you in blogging.
Exactly. And, that's a marketing 101 as well, is, if somebody else is being successful in that industry, it just shows that it can be done. So,
yes.
Yeah, you look at it from that perspective too. But I think it was Allie who said that in a previous interview that, the fact that somebody else is doing it shows you that it can be done. So we should be celebrating each other more than anything.
Definitely. That's genius right there.
I love it. Okay, great. So Amanda, anything coming up for you that you can share with us?
Let's see. So I'm really pursuing speaking now in my job. I as much as I love sharing bacon and stuff, I told you I don't like the back end of blogging.
Yes.
I do love inspiring others in any way that I can. And so I've been speaking a lot more. I have Blog Her coming up in New York. I think Gwyneth Paltrow is a keynote there. I'm going to stalk her a little bit.
I would bet, yeah.
And then Chopped,
Yes.
I'm so thrilled to be a part of this, and hopefully we'll be a part of inspiring people to have a renewed sense of life and creativity in their blog and in their social media.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to see you.
I'm so excited.
Yay. So, okay, just a few fun questions here at the end of the interview.
Oh, okay.
What's one food item you can't live without?
Eggs.
And you grow your own, don't you?
We do. We have over 60 chickens, so we have an abundance of eggs, which is great. I love it.
That's great. Any favorite dish that you make with them besides cake?
No, besides cake. It's cake.
Cake is the answer.
Cake's the answer to everything. No.
What's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. So I have one game on my phone.
Okay.
Out of all the games in the world, I have one, and it's called Best Fiends.
Best Fiends.
Fiends, and it's my 4-year-old, showed it to me, and I am kind of addicted to it. I love it. That's probably one of the only things I do on my phone other than work stuff.
Well, I think it's good to have a creative outlet like that, or break, something that you can give your mind a mental, break from everything.
Yes, exactly.
That's cool. I can't wait. I'll leave the link in the show notes for everybody so we can all check it out. I can't wait. Do you have any time for TV? And I think maybe you hinted that you do, but if so, what's your favorite show?
Okay. I love Cedar Cove. That's on the Hallmark Channel. And my guilty pleasure is I do watch The Housewives.
I thought you said that earlier on.
I do. And it's awful because I just judge, but they, and then I pray for him, so it's all good.
That's like having a Diet Coke with your cake, right? It all works out in the end. I love it. Okay, soup or salad?
Ooh, I would say since it's summertime right now, salad.
Yeah, salad's the way to go.
Yeah.
How can people find you online?
So it's typically I Am Baker on most forms of social media. So if you were to enter that into anything, you should be able to find me that way.
Amanda, thanks so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Thank you. It was such a joy.
Thanks to Amanda Rettke for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you were out running around and couldn't write down something important, don't worry, we took the notes for you. Just head on over to choppedcon.com, where I put up links for each show, including the stuff we talked about today and more information about our guests. I hope you're loving the Chopped Podcast. If so, it would mean the world to me if you'd head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give it a review. You can do that right now. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped Podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter or Instagram, or even Facebook. Your shout-outs really mean a lot. You know, you inspire me. So I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks so much for listening and have a great week.